This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, September 7th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees, so our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. As the political crisis in Mali continues to simmer, leaders of the Economic Community of West African States are meeting Monday in Niger. This will be their first face-to-face meeting since the beginning of COVID-19 restrictions 6 months ago. At the conclusion of their last virtual summit on August 20th, the leaders told the military junta in Mali that it wants a one-year transition to democratic rule. ECOWAS also demanded that the transition should not be led by any members of the military junta. But the military and the M5 protest movement want a transition process of 18 months. Meanwhile, an advisor to deposed Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta says Keïta left the country Saturday evening for medical treatment in Abu Dhabi, according to Reuters. Keïta, 75, was hospitalized in the capital Bamako last Tuesday. His former chief of staff, Mamadou Camara, told Reuters that Keïta left Bamako aboard a plane chartered by the United Arab Emirates at the request of Mali's ruling junta. Marriage in these socially distant times, even the ceremony itself can't always bring couples and their families together. In Africa, some digital savvy couples are finding virtual workarounds to get them to the altar, including weddings where the bride and groom are thousands of kilometers apart. VOA's Anita Powell spoke to one African couple who solidified their bond while in two different countries, and brings us this story of love, longing, and celebration from Johannesburg.
Here comes the bride. And here, on the other side of the continent, sits the groom. Fifi and Emmanuel Egwebu got married last month. She was in Nigeria's southeastern Enugu state, dancing herself down the aisle. And he was in Johannesburg, South Africa's economic hub, where he works as a musician, watching it all online.
On that day, he was online, and we were talking every second. So I didn't feel like he wasn't around. I actually felt he was with me, like he was with me, really. Just that he wasn't there present, So it was just, I'm sure people will be wondering, why is this girl dancing and laughing and having fun?
With COVID-19 travel restrictions, virtual weddings are becoming more common. But even those who are together can't celebrate in a traditional way because of pandemic restrictions on large crowds. It's crashed the business of Johannesburg party supplier Molebo Hengu-Wako.
It's going to take a very long time, whereas, because remember, we also grew up in big families. We always had people, at least a minimum of 7 people around you for your 7th, 8th, 15th, and 21st birthday and so forth. So it's going to be very hard to unlearn celebrating on your own. I'm not sure about the Western culture, because maybe you can just do a dinner with one other person and that's okay, but that's not us. That's not me.
While some couples are delaying their weddings until COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, the Egwebus didn't want to wait to declare their love and commitment.
I felt bad that I couldn't make it there in person. At the same time, when I saw her dance, happily smiling, kind of gave me confidence, all the confidence I needed, and okay, she's happy. So at least that's something to hold on to.
The Egwebus plan to reunite in South Africa when flights resume. Until then, they will take each other as husband and wife, to have and to hold, virtually. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
India, one of the biggest COVID-19 epicenters, is adding new cases at the world's fastest rate. Even as it approaches the 4 million mark, though authorities are opening the economy as they focus on mitigating the devastating impact of the pandemic on millions of people. And Jana Pasricha visited a weekly market in the Indian capital that has allowed city's pavement markets to reopen.
Hawking items like belts, utensils and clothes, these vendors are impatient to resume business at this weekly street market after 5 months. However, the pre-pandemic crowds of bargain hunters are missing.
I used to make about $2 to $5 daily. I have not even sold a single item so far. For 2 hours, I have not seen a customer.
These vendors carry their wares to pavement markets held across the city. But shoppers are wary as cases of coronavirus surge in Delhi.
It does not seem anyone will come. By this time earlier, there used to be a huge rush. Now there is nobody.
The pandemic is raging in India. It recorded 2 million infections in August, the world's highest. However, cities such as Delhi are lifting restrictions swiftly to restore lost livelihoods amid mounting concerns about long-term health risks due to the devastating loss of incomes.
There are huge consequences in terms of nutrition outcome on children's. Immunization services are disrupted. And these things are likely to have impact down the line, 2-3 years down the line, or maybe even longer.
The government has been giving free cereals and lentils to poor people. It helped, but with incomes gone, it was not enough for many.
It was difficult to buy vegetables and milk. I hope I can buy these for my children now.
The struggle to buy enough food is uppermost in the mind of Mohammad Shehzan, whose family had to cut back on portions.
I'm scared of contracting coronavirus, but I must work to survive because even if the virus doesn't catch us, we could die of hunger.
Authorities are taking precautions. This van stands ready to conduct tests. Stalls are set at a distance. Repeated announcements emphasize safety.
We have put sanitizing machines. All stalls have sanitizer, and we give masks to whoever doesn't have one.
But hope is turning to despondency. After setting up this stall, Hari Gobind Singh planned to recall his extended family, who left for the village when he had no income. Now, he is not so sure.
I'm not sure if this work can continue. We made good money earlier and could run our households easily. 2 of us support 20. But only I know now how we are coping now.
The economic scars of the pandemic will not disappear anytime soon, despite reopening cities on which many depend for their livelihoods. Anjana Pasricha for VOA News, New Delhi.
The Zambian Interior Affairs Minister says President Edgar Lungu is not interested in arresting and locking up his political opponents as a way of preventing them from running the 2021 presidential elections. Stephen Kampiongo says the ruling Patriotic Front Party will defeat the leading opposition party without any difficulties. Last week, Hakainde Hichilema, leader of the main opposition United Party for National Development, said President Lungu's government wanted to arrest him and later kill him to deprive him from participating in the 2021 election. A prominent Sierra Leonean gender activist says it was her own experience of being raped as a child that helped her understand that sexual violence is about power and control. Naasu Fofana spoke to VOA's Hedy Adams-Fitzpatrick during a visit to Washington early this year. She explained how America's Me Too movement at times re-traumatized her and why she says now is the best time for women in her country to speak out and hold the powerful to account.
The 2 people who raped me were people of power. So my religious leader and an uncle who was seen as, almost like a god-like figure in my family. And because I was powerless, I could not speak about these issues, so you obviously continue to suffer. It would have been my fault. People say to me, why didn't you tell your mother? Nobody was going to, first of all, believe me that any of these people, had done wrong. It was my fault as a child to have allowed me to be raped. There are people who would say, you're lucky that he, in fact, wants to sleep with you. Yes, and to date, that practice continues with people of power. So as a survivor, I think, every woman's experience is personal. And then 2017, I had an opportunity to come and do a course at NYU. And then I get here, and there's this whole Me Too movement. So I'm like, oh no, I thought I was running away from this at home, and then now I'm here, the television, every day you wake up, it's this, it's this talk. There's one woman coming after one woman after one.
The charges will not be believed by 12 people, assuming.
And it just felt really emotionally, I felt emotionally insecure. I almost felt like I didn't want to watch the television. I didn't want to hear, because there was so much recall, like relieving. So seeing this on, this global platform and people speaking, you're thinking, actually, it's okay to talk about this. Don't just keep putting your head under the pillow. It's fine. You can talk about it. What I like about the movement is the global voice that it has given to more women. And I think that has helped some of us to be a lot more braver. I remember somebody was saying in Sierra Leone, we should have a Me Too movement. I don't think, because our context is very different, and it's very, very difficult. We don't have the opportunities of having counseling, of having support when women speak. We don't have women who have financial freedom to be able to take lawyers. We don't have the judicial system to vindicate women. What we have is a culture full of impunity, full of powerful men who could break women. We have limitations in our context which wouldn't afford the Me Too kind of movement.
So when the president of your country made this announcement that rape would now be declared a national emergency in Sierra Leone, what did that moment mean to you?
So it was really good when this came out, and I went on social media and said, thank you, Mr. President. I'm really, really pleased that you have made it a national issue. Having said that, we can speak all we want to speak. If we don't put the structures in place to actually implement the laws that we're talking about, then it becomes useless. The other thing is we need to be able to have survivors' voices. Who NASU really is, that you might not really... I am currently doing my 50th speaker series. Girls and women. For me, my healing is actually taking my story as a preventative platform into schools. We need to prevent these children from getting into the situation that I got into. We need to let them know that now, there are laws they can report. Sometimes have sleepless nights about this. How are we going to have more women in politics? How are we going to have women leaders when our girls cannot finish secondary education because somebody has decided to violate them and get them pregnant? I have found so much support by working with these young people. I have not paid much attention to the adults who didn't believe my story when I eventually broke it out on social media, because I have a constituency who I care about, and they believe my story and they trust me.
We would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, why some NBA teams will turn their venues into pandemic voting centers for the 2020 U.S. presidential election. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump created controversy this week by appearing to urge his supporters to vote twice, through mail and in person, to test the election system and ensure their votes count. Voting more than once is illegal, and the president's comments have been slammed by critics, including Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has the story from Biden's home state of Delaware.
Trump supporters were energized during a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina, where President Donald Trump appeared to make a controversial suggestion: to vote by mail and then go to a polling station and possibly vote again.
And if on election day or early voting that is not tabulated and counted, you go vote. And then if for some reason after that, it shouldn't take that long, it comes in, they're not going to be able to tabulate it because you will have voted. But you have to make sure your vote counts.
Trump, who has previously said voting by mail leads to voter fraud, reiterated his message via a series of tweets, which Twitter has labeled as violating its civic integrity policy for encouraging people to potentially vote twice. Voting more than once is illegal in the U.S. Most states are encouraging voting by mail as a safe and secure method during the pandemic. Trump's remark was condemned by critics, including Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, who accused Trump of undermining the American election system.
I think it's all designed to create so much chaos that no matter what the outcome of the election is, that it's thrown up in the air. I mean, that must be his reason, because, I mean, he says and does things that no other president that I'm aware of in American history has ever done. And we all go, well, there's another ridiculous, illegal, inappropriate thing he said.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany defended Trump's statement.
The president wants enfranchisement, not disenfranchisement. That's his goal with the comments that he made.
But election officials and analysts are concerned about the potential impact on polling stations.
I think what the president and what the press secretary are missing is the chaos that a significant number of people who have already cast their absentee ballots showing up at the polling place will mean, because the polling places themselves are not set up to handle, a significant influx of provisional ballots. What it yields is a longer process for check-in, which means longer lines, and those individuals aren't going to get the information they wanted anyway.
Facebook said it would take down posts containing video of Trump's remarks on voting twice unless the posts correct the record about voter fraud. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
In the final 60 days of the 2020 election campaign for the White House, former Vice President Democratic Joe Biden leads incumbent Republican President Donald Trump in opinion polling in several key battleground states, including Wisconsin, which Trump won by a narrow margin in 2016. As VOA's Ken Farabaugh reports, organizers are working to register voters amid continuing racial unrest and the global coronavirus pandemic that has cost nearly 189,000 American lives.
It is the first week of classes at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where Evan Carabas is taking the school year, impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, in stride.
I took 2 online classes from my apartment. Nothing too intense.
But 60 days before the November election, Carabas finds intensity in his volunteer work with the Badger GOP, a college Republican group helping to re-elect President Donald Trump and elect other candidates on the ballot in Wisconsin.
We're getting out there as much as we possibly can, knocking doors, doing phone calls and all of that.
Opinion polling conducted in the weeks after the political party conventions shows little movement as former Vice President Joe Biden continues to lead President Trump in this key battleground state.
We're never expecting them to really be favorable to him, especially since, a lot of conservative voters are afraid to even pick up the phone and honestly say who they're going to vote for.
It's going to be very close. It's really going to be about how many voters can you reach.
Rihanna Mukherjee is on the other side of the political aisle from Carabas, but as the leader of the University of Wisconsin College Democrats, is also engaged in a high-intensity get-out-the-vote campaign done virtually and by phone amid the pandemic.
People are tuned in and they'll start to pay attention once their phones are starting to buzz. Hey, are you registered to vote? Hey, did you request your ballot? Let's do it now.
I think I'm up to almost 10,000 phone calls on my app. So there's that, and then I just started doing doors not too long ago. I've only done, I think, probably less than 1,000, but I anticipate it'll be a couple thousand by the time it's all said and done.
While both Carrabis and Mukherjee admit current events in Wisconsin, such as the U.S. government response to the coronavirus pandemic and unrest in the city of Kenosha, could change the outcome of opinion polling as the election draws near, it isn't changing the way they engage potential voters.
I don't think you can look at a poll and be like, okay, that's a done deal. It's really about the behind the scenes and what's happening in the country.
Yeah, I pay attention to them, but I don't let them influence my thought process too much.
I think a potential problem with the polling is the estimation of turnout.
University of Michigan professor Michael Traugott says this year is unprecedented because of the pandemic, and turnout is key, which polling should reflect.
It's probably appropriate in 2020 for pollsters to produce multiple estimates from their samples for a high turnout election and a low turnout election.
Traugott also says the race for the White House most likely won't end in 60 days as poll workers count all the ballots, including those mailed in.
It's very likely that the outcome of the 2020 presidential election won't be known for days and possibly a week or 10 days after what we think of as Election Day.
An election day that will be a first for both Mukherjee and Carrabis. While they support different candidates and different policy positions, it is their first opportunity to cast a ballot in a general presidential election. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Madison, Wisconsin.
In our sports news, about 20 U.S. professional basketball teams will convert their venues into pandemic-safe voting centers for the 2020 presidential election. The move is part of a deal with the NBA players who briefly halted their participation in the season-ending playoffs to protest racial injustice and police brutality. VOA's Maria Madiello reports the latest arena to announce its plans is New York City's Barclays Center, home to the Brooklyn Nets.
Officials with the Barclays Center this week encouraged residents to come to the arena to cast their ballots in the November general election.
We think it's very important, particularly during this pandemic, to provide the residents of this city with as many safe and open voting centers as possible. And so we were happy to work with government officials to make that happen.
City officials who appeared with Abamondi called for more owners and cities to offer their spacious arenas as sites where people can safely vote while observing social distancing recommendations. In late May, demonstrators gathered outside the Barclays Center arena to protest the death of George Floyd in the custody of Minneapolis police.
It is crucial that all of our arenas throughout the country join the Barclays, join Madison Square Garden, and join other venues to say we will open our doors and ensure that people will be allowed to vote. This space is being transformed from a place where peaceful protests took place to a place where peaceful voting will continue.
The initiative was part of a deal negotiated with the players to end a boycott that shut down the NBA playoffs last week. The boycott spread quickly after the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take the court against the Orlando Magic in response to Jacob Blake's shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Over the last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball.
The unprecedented sport boycott in support of racial justice spread rapidly, shutting down almost all professional sports in America for several days. Several team owners supported their players, but not everyone was pleased. President Donald Trump tweeted, "People are tired of watching the highly political NBA. Basketball ratings are way down and they won't be coming back." In response to Trump's tweet, Milwaukee Bucks Kyle Korver said, "Life is not about ratings. Life is about standing for what is right." Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden expressed support for the Bucks players, saying in a tweet, "This moment demands moral leadership, and these players answered by standing up, speaking out, and using their platform for good." The season resumed after players, coaches, and league officials agreed on concrete action to promote voting and civic engagement and support police and criminal justice reform legislation. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.